welcome to today's episode of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Today is a very special day on the podcast because we're making our maiden voyage across the pond to the United Kingdom, welcoming our guest today, Charlene Adamah, who has been in market research since even before she graduated college. She's currently the senior key account manager at a European-based market research, loyalty, and IT company called Bellendi that helps its clients understand, engage with, and retain its customers. Now, despite a rewarding and successful career in market research, sometimes there's a passion, a talent that just has to be addressed. And that's definitely the case with Charlene, and I'll let her tell you all about it on today's episode. So welcome to the show, Charlene.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. Oh, I'm super excited to have you here. The pleasure's all mine. So let's talk research. So how did you get into this industry, and why did you stay?
Well, I think from speaking to certain people, it seems to be quite a common trend that a lot of people fall into research.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the case with me. I was at college and needed a part-time, relatively flexible job because it's sort of part-time casual hours, so I could book in on a weekly basis. And I was working in a call centre on the phone initially as a telephone interviewer. And then sort of I did that and gradually sort of was promoted to sort of supervisor position. Eventually then decided that, okay, I could actually do this research thing. It's quite interesting. And I came back from college, well, actually was going to university. And I was there for the summer and I needed something to be a little bit more permanent, a little bit more stable. So yeah, continued to work my way up sort of in Cinnovate. This is where I was initially.
Okay.
Finished university and that daunting situation where you're like, what am I going to do with my life now? And sort of ended up staying in research. I left Cinnovate and went to IFF Research as a project controller there. And then somebody at Cinnovate that I worked with quite closely actually had a project manager position coming up and contacted me and said, do you want to come back?
Okay.
So I interviewed for it, got the job and came back. And then I went to Dynata, where I was a project manager for a long time. Giving away my age a bit if I say how long I was a project manager for there.
couldn't have been too long.
Obviously not too long. And then towards the end of my project management career at Dynata, I sort of, for a while, I'd thought about going over to what people would say is the dark side of sales. Just because of the relationships I had with the clients, and I thought that it would be a good fit for me. So at Dynata, I went over to the sales side and did a year there as a key account manager there.
Okay.
And then I went to Bellendi. So it's been a year as of last week that I've been at Bellendi as a senior key account manager, as you said. Loving it, and yeah, I think I found my place now on the dark side.
That's great. Well, there's no shame.
No shame.
It helps the world go around, right?
Just needed.
And certainly an interesting time to join through the pandemic. So that's good. Excellent. So all this time you're working in market research. There's this passion. There's this other thing. So tell us all about that, and maybe your favorite story from that experience.
Okay, so my side hustle, I'll probably just speak a little bit about how I got into it. You'll notice a trend here because like research sort of fell into it and didn't even realise that I could bake. So as well as obviously being in research, I also own a cake company called Chars Cakery. And I was on maternity leave with my first child. My best friend bought me a baking book and I started making some recipes for it because I had a lot of fun downtime on maternity. obviously looking after a child is hard work as well, don't get me wrong, but had a bit more time to bake. And then realised I really enjoyed it, and people started tasting my bakes and saying, "How much would you charge for this?" So me being me, sort of saw pound signs. I'm from the UK, so it's pound signs, not a dollar sign.
Pound signs, all right.
Um, and it's like, okay, so I could make a little bit of money from this on the side. So yeah, sorted out how to get myself registered, and sort of have been doing it for about 9 years now. I've been, yeah, doing Chars Cakery and providing a wide range of cakes. From I started off on cupcakes
Yeah.
and yeah, really simple cakes. Now I'll do sort of big corporate orders. I think I've
Wow.
gone up to a 6-tier wedding cake, and
Wow.
yeah,
Now,
it,
how do you squeeze that in, first of all, and second of all, do you work out of your own kitchen, or how does that work?
yeah. So I work out of my own kitchen, so I don't have a commercial kitchen, because I do it on the side of my 9 to 5.
Sure.
I didn't really want to pay for overheads of a commercial space, so I still do it out of my kitchen, which is fun for my family sometimes if I have a really big order on, because the kitchen might be a bit of a state in between stages. So my husband sort of will walk in and it will literally look like a bomb has hit the kitchen. If you come there, say half an hour later, you wouldn't know it had happened. But at that very moment, it's crazy. Like icing sugar everywhere, and yeah, he's not happy about it. But he supports me. He supports me, and I'm getting much better actually. 9 years later, at clearing up as I go along. But if I'm really in the moment and just passionately doing something, I find it hard to sort of stop and clear up. But I just sort of want
Right.
to get on to the next stage. But I am getting better. I'm improving because I'm trying to be considerate about those that I live with. But yeah, so that's I literally fell into it. But it's been doing really well, and yeah,
Now,
happy I did make the step to start my own business there.
that's great. Now, it sounds dangerous to me because you have young children, right? So you're working on a 6-tier wedding cake, and you've got young kids running around. Have you had any close calls, any adventures like that?
So my close calls wouldn't really be related to the kids, to be fair. They've
Hmm.
they're really good. My daughter, she would never. She's always sort of understood that, you know, cakes. It's important. You don't go anywhere near them. You don't touch them. I keep them out of
She
the
knows the
way.
rules.
She knows the rules. I keep them out of the way. My son's a bit more reckless. So if he got the chance to, he would probably climb up onto something. And so I have to make sure that if I'm baking a cake or doing cupcakes or anything like that, everything is well out of his reach. Because yeah, I don't know if I could quite. He hasn't yet, but I don't know if I could quite depend on him not to get curious and do it. But I've definitely had other mishaps. Um, None that I haven't been able to rectify, thank goodness, but two probably stick out in my mind. There was one with actually one of my really close friends' 30th birthday cakes. He was
Mhm.
having a massive party in a really lovely hotel, and I was commissioned, obviously, to do his cake. While I was in the middle of decorating it, it was on a sort of a turntable that tilts.
Okay.
So some of them tilt so that you can add detail to the side of the cake more easily,
Mhm.
as opposed to working on it straight on. It's better if it's at an angle if you're painting or doing something. So while I was working on the cake, had almost finished it, finishing touches done.
Right.
Um, the cake tilted on the tilting turntable and sort of went into the side of something else. There was a massive dent in
Oh
it.
no.
The topper that was in it actually broke as well. So it was a
Oh.
really lovely personalized topper that broke. And I sat there and I was like, I think I screamed quite a few times. I was like, no, 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 no. My husband sort of came out like, "What's wrong?" Um, and I sort of had to call sort of his partner who was coming to collect the cake to say, "Look, there's been an incident. I'll bring it straight to the venue," because there was also the added pressure of the fact I'm attending this event too. Um, she was going to pick it up
Here's my
later,
cake.
and she was going to pick it up, and then I was going to go to the party later. I had to just really sort it out, but I did. I sorted it out, and then I had to drive to the person that cut the topper for me because it was an acrylic topper, and she, luckily, I know her quite well, and she remade it for me on the way to the venue. I had
Oh,
to go to
wow.
her and pick it up, so that was really tight. The other occasion, I was driving with a cut cake in my boot,
Hmm.
and somebody ahead of me like slammed on their brakes just really suddenly.
Oh,
Um,
no.
and I just had that moment of dread in my stomach where I knew that the cake wasn't okay. I sort of went around to the boot. I don't think I've ever taken so long to open the boot of my car ever. And the top tier had sort of slidden down the bottom tier of the cake. It was unsalvageable. Luckily for me, the event was the next day, so I could take it
Okay.
home. I actually rebaked the bottom tiers and sort of did it again. And yeah, that worked out, but it could have been a complete disaster. So nobody has ever missed a cake from me,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping this never happens.
So
But
far,
I'm
so
not
good.
doing too. The law of averages. I mean, I'm not doing too badly to have sort of 2 incidents in 9 years.
Yeah.
But they were close calls. They were definitely.
Well, it's amazing that you've been able to avert disaster thus far, like
I
true
think so
disaster.
too.
So, fingers crossed that it continues. So these two worlds are very different, right? Potentially, market research, baking cakes. Is there a common thread, or maybe lessons you draw from one that you apply to the other?
I think that both of them sort of intertwine in terms of the lessons. Um, Definitely being calm under pressure,
Hmm.
because in both situations there can be things that don't go according to plan. As I've just explained, there were 2 situations there. Um, or similarly, a project that's not going too well.
Right.
But sort of, I often say in both situations, no one's died. That's
Perspective.
just, yeah, it really does put it in perspective. It's no one's died. I'm quite solution driven, and so far I've never had anything that I can't sort of come back from or that there's not a solution for.
Hmm.
So I think in that sense, just the problem solving, um, obviously the organisational skills as well, which is the age old thing. Oh, I've got great organisational skills, but you really do sort of
Yeah.
need them to juggle both aspects of my life. And then even
Hmm.
when I am doing one of those parts, I need it a lot. I need to
Right.
organise the cake stuff. There's the stages. There's the invoices. I go from sending sort of invoices and quotes over in my day job to then doing the
Yeah.
same sort of in the evening. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of crossover. Customer service.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it all sort of goes hand in hand. But just
That's
one is obviously a bit more creative than the other, so I get to have that creative outlet when I'm doing the cakes. Um, and sort of maybe the more logical side of my
yeah.
brain for the day-to-day blending
Yeah.
research work.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So you're a little bit of a guinea pig here, right? Because you're the first UK-based researcher on this program.
Yeah.
So kind of curious. So we know a lot about what the trends are in the US and maybe where research is headed. Do you have a perspective on the future of research or what's important from your perspective?
Um, One of the things for me probably that I'm seeing quite a lot of, and I do think is important as well, is I think recently it's garnered more attention. It's just the voice of people, sort of, so to speak. By that, I kind of mean ensuring that everyone sort of has a voice, regardless of race, sexual orientation, gender,
Right.
um, and a lot of people before were sort of doing a lot of NatRep studies
Hmm.
without trying to be inclusive or trying to ensure that they were reaching the basis that they need to actually ensure they were representative, because everyone's experiences are so different. And if there are large portions of people missing from data,
Right.
then there can be arguments, as to how valid that sort of data is. And I'm seeing a
Sure.
lot of people now pushing more towards getting that those people included
Hmm.
in the data. I'm seeing a lot of initiatives, and people really trying to sort of drive that forward. At Belendi, really recently sort of reprofiled our panels to sort of include ethnicity and sexual orientation, and I know that some other companies have done the same. I hope it's
Hmm.
something that people will take on board and sort of follow through with, because I think it's great.
Sure.
Um, but I'm seeing a lot of that definitely sort of happening, and yeah, I'm hoping that it does go from strength to strength.
Yeah, that's great. I think in my career in research, I thought that that's always been sort of a weakness of the samples that we build. So it's great to see that there's some focus on that. And speaking of which, you're sort of putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to that, right? So you, in addition to having a 9 to 5 and baking and a family, you are also a co-founder of a really cool and important organization called Core in the UK. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Core?
That was quite a good segue. It sort of linked in well there, didn't it? The I guess the more my career progressed, I found myself sort of looking at the research world, so to speak, so events, meetings, parties, and just thinking that there aren't that many people that look like me.
Hmm.
At Quirks London last year, I had some conversations with different people, and I realised that they sort of felt the same. This continued at the Impact Show as well, MRS Impact Show,
Hmm.
in February last year. And once from speaking to these people, I realised that a lot of people had been having these different conversations amongst themselves about what they felt was missing from the research world in terms of the lack of representation of ethnic people from various ethnic backgrounds
Right.
in the research world. Um, so one of the benefits of lockdown, I guess, was that it gave us time to sort of have a multitude of video calls and set up Colour of Research, so also called Core. Um,
Hmm.
and it was me and Theo Francis, who works at Guinea Pig, Natalie Samuel, who's at Ipsos, Graham Edehen, who's at Lucid, Melissa Gonzalez from Differentology, Bob Qureshi from iView,
Hmm.
Sia Najumi from One Global, and Tatenda Masasengwa from YouthSite. I remembered the whole team. I'm so proud of myself.
Nicely done.
I'm thinking, did I miss anyone out? No, I got everybody. So we were sort of the co-founders of Core, and we decided to get together. The mission statement sort of on our website is basically that our mission is to be seen and heard in an industry that we love, but we're currently underrepresented in. So it's just that we love our jobs and we love the people that we work with, but we do think that more needs to be done to support people from ethnic backgrounds within the industry, just so they can fulfill their best potential. Also to try and encourage people from various ethnicities to enter the industry and also stay in it.
Sure.
So we had a nice launch event that happened with the mentorship program. We too have a podcast where we speak
Great.
to different success stories within the research world from ethnic backgrounds. Have a great website, sort of full of resources. Shall I plug it? It's
Sure. Sure.
colourofresearch.org. So there's just so many resources on there, sort of information on how to be involved, how to be an ally. And yeah, I'm really happy and proud to be a part of it. The industry's just really been so supportive of the start of Core,
Right.
and I hope to see it continue. I mean, obviously there have been a lot of things to do with race relations,
Hmm.
so at the moment, it's the in thing in a way, to
Yeah.
tackle diversity.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't want it to be a knee-jerk reaction. I want it to be a thing that we continue to look into and strive to improve across the board, and not just ethnicity. There's MRS Pride, who obviously focuses on the LGBTQ plus. There's women in research as well, so
Yep.
Wire, and
Mhm.
yeah, I think we're all doing great things to just ensure that everyone is seen and heard and supported.
Yeah, it's a very welcome development in our industry, and I think it's here to stay because it serves a very important purpose. So it's great. It's great stuff. So you mentioned the Color of Research podcast. I'll link to that when I post this. Uh, but are there, being that this is a podcast, are there other media sources, podcasts, blogs that you personally find inspiring or interesting or funny, something that you would like to share with others?
So generally with podcasts, to be fair, whenever I listen to them, podcasts for me personally is like my downtime. It's like my escape from sort of anything else. So I listen to podcasts not so much for information. To be honest, a lot of the podcasts I listen to discuss a lot of really menial things. But one that I love is the Receipts podcast. It's exclusive to Spotify now. They started off on all platforms. But
Okay.
it's basically three women from London as well, London and Essex, but in the UK. Um, late 20s to mid 30s, and we just discuss current affairs, their general views on things. They have an episode every other week called Your Receipts, where they do sort of an agony aunt, sort of answering dilemmas. And I resonate with it so much. It's just, I feel as if I could be listening to my friends
Right.
speaking. And yeah, I listen to that a lot. I've listened to every episode of that podcast. It's a weekly thing. The other thing that I listen to, I'd be really surprised if you'd ever heard of. And people look at me as if I'm quite strange when they realise that I do listen to it. But there's a Radio 4, BBC Radio 4 has a series which they've had for years, since way before I was born, called The Archers.
The Archers.
Um,
Okay.
and it's sort of like a radio soap opera in a way, but it's like set on a farm. The demographic of people that listen to it, I'm sure, are quite a bit older than I am.
Sure.
And yeah, people are always really surprised that I listen to it, but I love it. I listen
Uh,
to every episode of The Archers. It's sort of an easy 15 minutes a day.
sure.
Really enjoy it.
Everybody needs an escape, right? That's great.
This is it. And yeah, I really use podcasts as my escape and sort of my downtime.
Cool. Cool. That's great. So this is the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, after all, right? So I have to ask. So I hope you have had a chance to think about this a little bit. So you're stranded on a desert island. You have three records of your choice to keep you company for the rest of your days. What are those three records?
This was so difficult.
It's always
And
the hardest.
I'm sure that, I've listened to some of your episodes, and yeah, a few other people have said the same. It's so hard, so hard. But and for me, it was hard because I listened to a really wide range of things.
Yeah.
But because it was sort of an album, that's one artist, right? So I would listen to 90s pop, I would listen to a bit of classical, but I'm not going to listen to, a whole collection of Mozart.
Right.
It'll be like the odd symphony that I prefer. But for me, the first one, which anyone that knows me would probably be surprised about me selecting this one, and it's A Destiny's Child, The Writings on the Wall. Now, they'd be surprised about that because I'm like the biggest Beyonce fan. So I think that they would probably think that I would select a Beyonce album rather than Destiny's Child.
Yeah.
But the memories that I have of that album,
Right.
and like I can sing it front to back, including the Skip starts, where they're pretending to be from The Godfather, everything. Like, I know the whole thing, and I
It's
sing the
kind of
whole thing.
it's kind of old school.
I've brainwashed my daughter as well, so she now loves Destiny's Child too. And yeah, that would definitely be one of them.
Awesome.
The other one would be Notorious B.I.G. Life After Death.
Very nice.
Now, I'm a massive 90s noughties hip hop fan. Like, yeah, if a song comes on, you'll be surprised about how many lyrics I can So I like, my husband like looks at me all the time. What is wrong with you? How do you know all of these song words? Where are you storing all of this information? Who are you? But I love that album. Even more of a bonus that it's a double CD, it's a double disc. Sort of get 2 for 1 cheaply.
Yeah, that's part of the strategy.
Yeah.
Right?
But yeah, anything sort of 90s, early noughties, Bad Boy label. So yeah, Diddy's, who was then Puff Daddy, his label, all of the artists on there. But that album has a special place in my heart, so definitely that one.
Cool.
And the other one might be a bit controversial because it's quite a recent one. And it's by Wizkid.
Okay.
Who's a Nigerian artist. His latest album, Made in Lagos. It was just released in end of October, start of November.
That's awesome. It's probably the newest release on this podcast. So go ahead.
But it's just, I listen to it and it just brings me so much joy. I feel as if it's brought like so much joy to my lockdown. When Spotify did, at the end of the year, they do the rundown of your most listened to songs. And I mean, considering that album was released I started listening to it in November, it was in my top for the whole year of what I listened to on Spotify.
Wow.
Yeah.
It caught up quick.
It really did. And that just showed me sort of how much I listen to it. There's only a couple of songs, that are parental advisory, so I can listen to it around the kids as well.
Yeah.
Just skip the words I know that sort of aren't appropriate. But a lot of it's just sort of feel good, and I can listen to it with them, and like they enjoy it too. And yeah, it makes me happy. So I think I would definitely keep that one too. But I mean, if you ask me this question next year, I would probably give 3 different albums. But at the moment, those would definitely be my favorite.
Well, maybe next year around this time, maybe I'll have a chance to visit the UK, and then I can get an updated list, and then I'd love to hear you riff on some Biggie Smalls. So.
Oh my gosh, I would definitely, please. I mean, I don't know how people that know me would feel about me doing that, but I would do it. I'm up for it.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, Char. I really appreciate it. I'm very thankful that you're on the podcast. I'm sure people will enjoy this as well. I hope we have a chance to meet in person sometime soon once this lockdown is done. But for the meantime, it's been a lot of fun, and rock and roll. Rock and roll.